The Sea Org was a smaller outfit then than it is now, and it was, easier to rise, I guess, to that level at that time than it would be, say, now. And he got up to working in that film unit. He was a cameraman, working directly under L. Ron Hubbard. And there's various stories, which I won't repeat because I really don't know if they're true or not. There were stories told, rumors circulated around when I got into the Sea Org in the 90s. By that time, there were these, legendary stories or anecdotes about how Miscavige had interacted with Hubbard and shown himself to be this very loyal and on policy, meaning he followed Hubbard's directions very well. And even if he had to disagree with Hubbard on it, and stuff like this. So there were these stories that would circulate around about what a great guy he was. So then by 1979, by the time all this tumultuous activity is going on and Hubbard's, hiding out in the desert, Miscavige is a cameraman. He then gets himself into a situation where he's promoted to a post called the Action Chief. And I guess the simplest way to explain that is that one of the ways that the Sea Organization at a core upper management level would enforce its will, or L. Ron Hubbard's will, on the lower church organizations that are not Sea Org, that are not manned by Sea Org members, that are just regular people or regular Scientologists doing the work. The Sea Org would send projects, or what they called missions, and they would send 2 people or sometimes more, never less than 2. And those projects or missions would operate on very specific directions. You're to get, target 1, target 2, target 3, target 4 done, and then come back. That was the project, or that was the mission. And somebody at the headquarters level would run the project people, would tell them what to do, right? Would receive daily reports from them and then give them direction on what to do. That position was called the Action Chief. And this was the guy who was overall responsible for these projects that were being sent out. But from the level of management where L. Ron Hubbard was the one ordering these missions to get done, or very, very senior Scientologists were, he was right up there in that, at that, breathing the rarefied air of where L. Ron Hubbard was. So that was a position of some responsibility and some importance, right? And it's given to this 19-year-old Sea Org member who's really gung-ho and really, looks like he's with the program. So that's kind of where David Miscavige fits at this time. And we'll trace how he rises from there. Now Hubbard at this time had been the guy who had been heading up Scientology management and heading up the Sea Org for all these years. There had been an effort, you might remember in our last talk, for Hubbard to kind of cut those ties when he started up the Sea Org, and he thought he was just going to go off and do the Sea Org thing, and management was just going to kind of happen with the people he turned it over to. But Hubbard was such a kind of megalomaniac control guy that he had to have his hands in everything. And within 2 years, he had disestablished all of that worldwide management stuff and taken it back over. So the Sea Org is running Scientology internationally. And of course, L. Ron Hubbard is the head of the Sea Org. But he could not be seen at this point to be the guy giving all the orders, because they needed plausible deniability so that he would not go from unindicted co-conspirator to indicted conspirator, right, on this federal charge. And there were other tax evasion was going on at this time. The church hadn't paid their taxes in a decade. So there were a lot of reasons L. Ron Hubbard had to fear the law. So they set up this other management structure, and I won't get into all the details of it. We don't have to go into all that kind of nitty gritty, but I will say that they formed a committee which was called the Watchdog Committee. And this was the most trusted high-level Sea Org members under L. Ron Hubbard. A woman named Dee Dee Riesdorf and Gail Irwin were the chairperson and the deputy chairperson. And these were people who had worked directly under Hubbard for years, were very, very trusted, as well as a couple named Pat and Annie Broker, whose names you'll hear more of, because they were the ones who ended up being with Hubbard till the very end. So they were part of this Watchdog Committee setup. And this was it was publicly announced in 1979 that this body was the management, the senior ecclesiastical management body for the church. And Mary Sue Hubbard, at this point, just to further set the stage a little bit here, she's living in Florida at this point. She's not in prison yet. In 1979, the case had not gotten to the point where they were going to jail yet. It was all still in the midst of everything. So, but she's out of contact with Hubbard. There can't be any contact between them, again, because of the legal situation. And to add further misery to the Scientology picture, in August of 1979, they had a major legal case turn against them. A woman named Julie Christopherson was suing the church in Portland, Oregon, for fraud and promises that they had made to her in regards to courses that she was going to take in Scientology. She was just a public level Scientologist. She was never a staff or Sea Org member. Well, the church lost the suit, and they had to pay $153,000 in compensatory damages and an additional $1.9 million in punitive damages. And this is 1979 money. So this was going to completely destroy the church if they ended up having to pay that. So just a little bit of pressure on the church, right? No big deal.
And this reminds me of the type of pressure the Mormon church got when the government started coming after it for practicing polygamy. By 1890, the church was going to go bankrupt, all of its assets were going to be seized. It faced a true existential crisis. And that was basically because of Joseph's polygamy starting in the early 1840s, that then followed on by Brigham Young and everybody else. And it's one of those existential moments where the church is almost bankrupt and is almost destroyed.
That's right. And that was the situation with the Church Scientology here at this time. That is not overstating the case. And it actually was kind of in this stress mode for quite a while. This was one of the reasons, this was one of the ways that Miscavige was able to use this to get rid of people and rise up, as we'll see. So in October of 1979, 9 of the people who were indicted by the FBI agreed to be found guilty on charges of conspiracy and theft. They reduced the charges but pled guilty. And this Operation Snow White thing had been going on it was a 4-year program. It was a very long, extended operation. And it's been characterized as the largest known infiltration of the United States government that has ever been carried out by anyone. So it was not a small thing they did. They tried to spin it as they were being prosecuted for religious purposes, and all they did was steal copy paper, and it was all much ado about nothing. But this was not nothing. This was a very big deal. So these guys get indicted, and in December, 5 high-ranking members of the church, and this includes Hubbard's wife, are sentenced to prison for conspiring to obstruct justice and to obstruct a criminal investigation. And they are basically sentenced to 4 years. Mary Sue, I think, was sentenced to 5. And I believe she served 2 or 3 of those years. But that happens at the end of 1979. So in 1980, Hubbard takes off. Like at this point, he had been in a place in La Quinta and then in Hemet, California, where a small number of Sea Org members, but more than 2, the management people still could contact him, were still around him. But by March of 1980, he's out of there. He gets in a Bluebird motorhome with Pat and Annie Broker, are his 2 trusted people. And this is the last time, March of 1980, that he was publicly seen by anyone admitting to having seen him until his death in January 1986. So this is the point when he truly disappears and goes completely off grid.
Okay.